Welcome to Real Estate Investing for Women. On this show, you will learn how to create wealth through real estate the blissful way. That means with very little stress and very little time. We talk about strategies, mindset, heart set, money smarts, resources, and so much more to ensure you're able to create the success you most deeply desire. Now, here's your host, Moneeka Sawyer.
Today, I am so excited to welcome to the show Beth Kromer. She is a neighbor of mine in Marin. I'm so excited to be talking to a California person. Yay! Beth, co-founder of VADU, which is Value Added Dwelling Units, has had a successful career in coaching, mentoring, and leadership in large corporations and startups. Beth has also constructed, owned, and rented multiple properties, including ADUs, in the Bay Area and Sun Valley, Idaho. Beth has a background in property financing, purchasing, and management, a master's of public administration and housing, and was a Peace Corps volunteer in Ecuador. She lives in Nasacio, which is in Marin, with her husband, Robert, and her dog, Ralph, and manages their ADU. Hey there, Beth, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I am absolutely delighted to be on the show and to talk about one of my absolute favorite topics,
Yeah.
real estate.
I love it too. Yay! And for those of you who know, I'm on Roku and then also on YouTube. And Beth has this amazing backdrop. It's real. It's actually her window, her living room window with the beautiful California mountains. I miss it so much because I just moved from San Jose to Sacramento. And so in San Jose, we had the Los Gatos Santa Cruz Mountains behind me that I could stare at and enjoy every day. And now in Sacramento, as much as I love Sacramento, it does not have the mountains. So I'm just loving that view. You ladies, you should go to YouTube and check it out. So Beth, could you tell us a little bit about your story, like high level, 2 minutes? How did you get into what you're doing?
Yeah, so sure. The company that I co-founded with my business partner, another woman whose name is Margaret Kerrigan, she and I have both have backgrounds in real estate. She in appraising, and I have a lot of commercial property ownership and also residential with my husband. But a couple of years ago, she and I were talking about business opportunities, and I am incredibly passionate about the idea of putting additive rental units within our houses and in commercial property, or the conversion of commercial property. Here in California, as you probably know, we have a lot of new legislation that highly supports the conversion of property into residential so that we can get more housing into our neighborhoods, which is desperately needed. So we started this business just a couple of years ago. It's our website is myvadu, VADU.com. And we are in the business of assisting and helping property owners put more residential units within their property.
I love that. And you're right. It's so desperately needed. I mean, we just look around us, and it's so interesting to see how things are converting after COVID, right? It seems like everything is changing. There's so many places that are boarded up. There's so many commercial property owners that are feeling the pain of not being able to find renters, or losing their renters, or their renters not renewing their leases, right? Because people aren't needing office space as much. Now people are more working at home. So it is really interesting to watch kind of how is this conversion going to happen. So I'm really excited that you're spearheading how to help those of us that have commercial properties to kind of relieve the pain or convert to something that's much more profitable and much easier to deal with, maybe, So talk to us a little bit more about creating the housing within properties that we have.
Yeah, so I think that most people intuitively, if you just visit downtowns or you work You know that the demand for commercial space is particularly office space. We can talk about retail, but if we just want to talk about office space right now, it is significantly down. And at this current moment, 27% of all office space in the United States is vacant. This is what well into the pandemic, and it is for all intents and purposes, it's not going to come back. This demand for office space where people went into an office on a daily basis was something that was just absolutely flipped on its head. And even if businesses think, gosh, maybe I'll have a hybrid thing where some people come back, sometimes the demand for office space is just not there. With, as you know, but maybe a lot of people don't know, commercial leases tend to be very long. Mm-hmm. It could be 5, 10, 15 years. And so what we're seeing is lots of vacant office space. The owners right now a lot of them are holding, they can't sell it, and they certainly can't rent it, but they might still be getting some revenue in. But we're getting to see that we have owners of commercial space who are desperate. They cannot rent this. There is no demand for it. And concurrently, we have a housing crisis. So we have not enough housing, not enough rental. With the interest rates going up, a lot of people, as you probably know, are deciding to rent because they just feel they cannot purchase a house. Rental prices in many of our communities have gone up 10, 20, 30%. Some places it's up as much as 50%, like Florida and in the Bay Area. So it is such a logical, natural conclusion to say, gee, we have office space that's vacant. And we know what type of offices can be converted. Commercial space like offices have higher zoning regulations than residential. So life safety codes can be flipped pretty easily. And we can talk a little bit of what it takes to convert an office space to residential, but it's not as challenging as many people might think. And the return on investment is significant, especially when you're thinking zero renting ability lease that is no income to being able in the Bay Area to easily rent a 1-bedroom apartment for $3,000-$4,000 a month. Right. The difference is astounding.
It's significant. Mm-hmm. It is really interesting. So like I said, I live in Sacramento, and my husband took a walk and went to Kaiser the other day, and I picked him up. And one of the things that he mentioned, and I hadn't seen this yet, but now I'm starting to pay attention, is that he had to walk through downtown. And there was a particular area, there's this huge redevelopment area in Sacramento where they've got this gorgeous building. It's called the Sawyer. Actually, we looked at buying there just because we wanted to live in the Sawyer because we're Sawyers. It was funny. We're like, wow, this is cool. But like one condo there was going for $3 million. So they we're not doing that. I mean, I love, we, whatever, but no. So, so funny, but not worth that much. But it was interesting to me that in this area, they were selling these condos for this much money. But right across the street, all the office buildings are boarded up. How is that even possible is what I thought. Like, how is it that you can have this really, really expensive, high level type of building and then right across the street have everything boarded up? And what was so sad, and he mentioned this to me, is that there's so much boarded up that those people that own the commercial property down the lane will never be able to rent because it's got to start over where there's still some activity happening, right? Over at the beginning that owner might be able to rent, then that owner might be able to rent, but nobody wants to be the office space that's open amongst all these boarded up buildings. So I was like, wow, so how do you deal with that? As an owner, how do you deal with that? And what we're seeing is that, yes, as residential, they're able to sell these really high priced places. And my thought was, well, can you convert all these boarded up buildings into commercial? So this is like literally David and I had this conversation yesterday. So what a synchronous time for us to be talking about this. Do you know what I mean?
Oh my gosh, I completely know what you mean. I live near San Rafael. That was our first commercial conversion we were taking office space that was from a law firm and converting it into single residential units, multifamily. Now, a couple of things that are super interesting of what we do in my company, which is VADU, is that we concurrently work with the municipality and also the owners. And the reason we need to work with the municipality because pre-COVID, lots of towns would say, we only want commercial ground level. Because for whatever reason, for zoning purposes, they felt like we want commercial, but the mixed use, the top half could be residential. Mm-hmm. There is zero demand for this ground level. There are restaurants, coffee shops, and some boutique little retail shops are great. But to your point, if there aren't office workers and there isn't residential, who wants to put a coffee shop up when it's all boarded up around them? So we speak to elected officials, and we have influenced towns to change their zoning. You might think that this is incredibly difficult. It does take some time, but the downtowns want to have vibrancy. They want to have occupancy, and they want to have residential units. In California, we're mandated to do this. So we've been able to influence them. And there are certain types of offices that are super easy to convert. There are others, I shouldn't say super easy, but they can't be converted. There are others that are more challenging. If it's an office building that's relatively new, built within the last 30 to 40 years, it will have the correct type of seismic, which is a big deal here in California, in that you don't have to go in and do a lot of engineering and restructuring. So what we need to do with residential units is we have to have windows and exits. So oftentimes it's making sure that the building isn't huge, but a little bit more narrow, and that there can be a window in the front and a door in the back. And that we simply segregate each unit, put in bathrooms and kitchens, some plumbing, and individual heating and air conditioning. And that's the extent of it. It's really not that complicated, especially since a lot of offices are already segregated into spaces. But what we find is that we give the path to people to be able to convert, to make this profitable, which is a win-win for communities, for renters, and for the owners of the property. And a huge bonus of this is that when people live in these spaces, they don't have to have a car. They can just walk to amenities, and they're living and working from home. So it's we have found huge demand, but with a little bit of influencing.
So do you personally go and help talk to the communities, the building departments and the planning departments and that sort of thing? Or do you teach people how to do it?
So our business model is that we get into a community and we start influencing the elected officials, the zoning, planning, zoning, and building folks. And we really try to encourage them to think about this as a solution to a multifaceted problem that you have. You have a problem that you don't have enough housing. We have a problem that we have this vacancies, that we have a lack of vibrancy of our downtown. So it's a little bit of a hard sell because we have to actually influence people to change their zoning.
Which is really hard usually, right?
But once we have done that, we are the first that are doing it in these towns. So once we feel that we know the argument, we can influence, and we do that on behalf of our clients. So our clients hire us to both make sure that it is legal, allowable, doable. We do an assessment before we even really start to make sure that this conversion can happen quickly within a budget, and that we have reason to believe that we can influence and get it approved before we even pull a permit, and that we help our clients, or we navigate the entire process from that to actually having an architect, builders, and we are not general contractors. We are not architects. We are agnostic. We work we're not agnostic at all. We work on behalf of the owners. So to start to finish. Okay. And we really work as consultants with them to make this process work quickly, efficiently. We also go through all the financials for them and actually help people rent out the property if they need assistance with that.
Interesting. So, talk to me a little bit. So there are two different ways that we can convert. So there's a few more things that I want to talk about on this show. I just want to let you know, Beth, kind of where I'm headed in case I lose my train of thought because I start hacking. We'll see what happens. But there are three things that I'd really like to cover. First is, if you already have a property, what is the path, right? You gave us a little bit about that, but really a deep dive into what is the path to get it into becoming residential. The other one is, would you consider it a good idea to buy some of these boarded up commercial places and then convert them? Like, is that a good investment opportunity? And the last one is, and I know that you love talking about this, is how to utilize areas in our own home to create revenues, right? So those are the three things that I'd really like to talk about. Where would you like to start?
Sure. So, it's just really interesting because I follow your train of path, and I'm like with a dog with a squirrel. I'm like, I like all of the topics. But so perhaps to start with the beginning, if we have people that have a vacant commercial office space or even retail space that they are finding that they cannot rent it. What we offer is that we, free of charge, will do an assessment of the property, the zoning, the year it was built, and we can fairly quickly give people a heads up of a rough estimate if this is like a red, yellow, green build. A green build would be something that we think is super easy. The return on investment might be just a few years, which is astounding when you think about, we don't have to talk about cap rates here, but when my husband and I used to purchase commercial property, the return on investment can be 20, 25 years. We're talking about 4 to 5 years, which is just a really big deal. But so the very first thing to do is, if you happen to have a 20-story office space that is humongous in the middle of a city, that is going to be a very, very difficult conversion, because if you can just think about it, there's no light or air in the middle of the building. But if you have an office space that is more narrow, it's traditional offices in our smaller or medium-sized downtowns, those can easily be converted. So we can give an assessment right off the bat. After that, we have two different paths. We can act as consultants and give people the path so they can work for themselves. So we'll do a paper like desktop exercise for people that navigates them through the entire process. Or we work for the owners as a percentage of the build cost or the rebuild cost. All of our clients have just sort of gone to that one because of all the work that it takes, and we know how to do that. So the very first thing I would say is an assessment of the property. I would say 75 to 80% of all office space can be converted, but not 100%. It could be converted, but we look at the cost for that. So our first clientele, the first group of people that we work with, are folks, and it could be small businesses, like a legal firm that we work with, husband and wife. They had 10 office spaces in their downtown place, vacant for 2 years now. No chance that anybody's coming back. Upstairs is residential, super high ceilings, narrow, long, beautiful concrete floors, and just like a loft experience that we were able to, and are able to convert into residential housing, which gets rented like that. Like we have demand for to people to rent it before it's even finished. So you, as someone that knows real estate, it's all, if it's commercial real estate, it's all about what are you renting for? What can you get per square footage? And so what's beautiful about this is then you can think about, well, do I keep it and be a landlord, or do I sell it? Because at this point, you're selling multifamily residential real estate, which is highly in demand, high demand. But try to sell a vacant commercial office space right here in the small town of San Rafael at LoopNet, which, as you know, has all commercial real estate rental. There are over 100 office buildings in one town that are vacant, just completely vacant. So there's, and I watch it all the time, there's no demand. You cannot rent it out. So if it is vacant and you can't rent it out, your selling price is going to be very suppressed. During COVID, what skyrocketed was residential and warehouses, right? That's the real estate that boomed. Commercial real estate for offices is in an incredible slump, and I predict is going to get even more suppressed.
So you don't think
great.
You don't think that people are going to come back into their offices at all?
No.
Really?
I would ask most people right now probably think, and where surveys are happening, they say, gosh, I'd like to go back every once in a while. But as we spoke about in the beginning of the conversation, my husband and I also own rental property in Sun Valley, Idaho, which is a gorgeous location, well known for its skiing and outdoor fun. All during COVID, when we would visit there, I would see people working who are on the ski slopes.
Got it. Yeah.
So I do think there were creatures that love to be together. I do think that there's a lot to be said about face-to-face interactions, but I think that people also cherish being able to live where they want to live, have the ability to travel. And so I think a hybrid is what will be coming back. So by definition, 50% of our office space is probably going to remain vacant.
50%. Okay.
My point of view.
So it's so interesting because so we just moved to Sacramento because David's job, I can work anywhere, but David's job, he's in tech. Surprise. Yeah. And so his company went virtual, obviously, during COVID. And they committed after Facebook and Google led this movement of everybody can work anywhere. We're not going to adjust salaries. We're not going to, whatever. Right. And you can work anywhere. And then, of course, Google and Facebook changed their mind. They're like, oh, well, we're going to adjust salaries based on where you go to, because people were going, to Idaho and getting California salaries. Like, wow, that's pretty awesome. And the companies realized that, well, they can cut back on expenses, whatever. Now, all of these guys, Google, Facebook, Apple is doing the same thing. They're saying, we've got these big campuses. If you want to work here, you have to come back. So for us, now we've moved, like we can't go back, right? We're 2.5 hours away. He can't work in the office anymore unless we move back to that area, which we don't want to do. But so what I'm hearing so much of is the big corporations are now saying we are going to utilize this real estate that we have a commitment to. But what I'm hearing from you is that even though that may be happening, and we'll see like a level of success, they're trying to figure it out too, right? But the smaller businesses, what you're saying is these smaller commercial spaces are less likely to have that same movement back into the office. Is that what you're saying?
Well, there's two things that are in play here is that absolutely I understand and I do come from this world where huge corporations have these campuses and they're like, gosh, it's easier to manage people if I can see them.
Right.
I don't quite understand that in tech because everything is measured by what you produce, you write, and create. But let's take the very, very large corporations out of this, saying that we are not converting nor thinking about converting like Apple headquarters into residential. They're of their own entity. But there are two things that are happening. Let's say that you had a company of 20 people and you have a choice of making those 20 people highly dissatisfied by saying you have to come in every single day, 5 days a week, and you have to live in downtown San Francisco, which isn't, you may not want to live in, you might want to live somewhere else. So you have a group of employees who don't want the solution, and you, business owner, if you do want that, have to pay for all that office space. Or you could not pay for the office space and say, you team, go work where you want. We'll measure your productivity, not your presence. And by the way, I just saved millions of dollars over the course of several years by not having to pay office space. Mm-hmm. So I think about it in that context. There's the sunken costs of the Apple and Google. They've got these huge places, and what are they going to do with them? But you have other companies who are trying to make a choice point. Do I sign a 10-year contract for office space in a downtown area that's going to cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, and make my employees dissatisfied, or just let them create their own offices, to me, the owner, for free? Mm-hmm. So I think that's the piece of the equation that we haven't quite seen play itself out, because as we said, these office, I think a lot of people don't know that commercial leases are so very, very long, and you can't just say, I want out. Yeah. So what I think we're seeing in year 2, 3, or 4 is people are not taking new leases as they did before, but wait till we see all the 5 to 10 year leases that end and are not renewed because they're sitting vacant. And I think it's not a good business decision to have long-term office leases.
Do you think,
in my opinion?
Right. Do you think that they know? Of course, and that's what I'm really asking for, right? Do you think that the people that own the commercial properties will sign shorter leases?
They may sign shorter leases if they can actually even find anybody who would take even a short lease. Mm-hmm. So absolutely, what do? We do what worked for us in the past, right? So we have a lot of commercial people who own commercial real estate offices. This has been highly lucrative with very little vacancy, with long leases, triple net, where the tenant pays for everything. It's been great. The whole world has changed. Our perception of it has not changed completely. And people that own, I think they're hoping that this is coming back, and they're glomming onto things that you're talking about, like, well, look, Apple,
the big companies,
back. Well, talk to mid-sized companies. That where there's a huge scarcity of workers, right? Especially technical workers. And if you aren't Google and you have to compete to get technical workers who there's a scarcity of, you're going to let them work where they want to work. You just are. So I think what the lagging indicator here is the commercial office space owners who are hoping. And they also are still getting revenue. Many of them, even if it's vacant, if it's boarded up, you and I might think, gosh, they're getting no revenue. They probably still are getting some revenue, but that's not going to happen forever.
That's right, because the leases haven't run out, is what you're saying.
Correct. And unless the owners or of the companies that had the lease go bankrupt or they default on it, they have to keep paying it, renegotiate it. Maybe they're paying a lesser amount. But when we are seeing hundreds and hundreds of office spaces, buildings that are going vacant, and it's just growing month after month, that we would like to watch, what we all should be watching is that 28% of complete office vacancy that's going on right now.
Got it. So, and you're talking about offices, not retail space. Is that true?
That the 28% is only office space. Now we can talk about retail.
Let's talk a little bit about retail. Yes, let's do it.
So if you happen to own retail space during COVID, and even before that, there's so much that has been said that COVID just accelerated trends that were going to happen anyway.
Absolutely.
So who completely won during COVID was Amazon, right? Mm-hmm. Delivery to home is just a given now. If you think like, gosh, I need a little thing for my kitchen, am I going to go to a store? Or do I order it on Amazon and get it within hours of the next day? We've all been conditioned to something that we were going to anyway. Every retail company is feeling this. I was shocked just the other day. I guess I just didn't realize this. 75% of Starbucks business is either online, which is pre-ordered, and it goes through drive-through. 75%. We are quickly moving to a digital non-interface transaction to get things like food and shopping. So when I think about downtowns, I think that why would we go to a downtown? We used to go to downtown because we worked there and we would eat lunch and have coffee. Right now, people are working in downtown, so you don't go get coffee and you don't get your lunch there. But people still would like to live and work in downtowns, perhaps in their own space. Mm-hmm. And so the retail that might work going forward is boutique, charming little places that you can find things that you want to, it's tactile, you want to touch, you want to try on. The restaurants, the coffee shops, those are all great. Mm-hmm. But I question whether people are really going to want to drive to a downtown and buy something that they can purchase just simply online, which really has no need for you to touch it, look at it, and interact. So I think that our retail suppression is huge, and it is not coming back. Mm-hmm. So there's a whole nother conversation, but for the intents and purposes of real estate, then we were thinking, well, there's a huge opportunity here. Tremendous demand for residential rental property, or even like you were talking about, you can make these places condominiums and sell, and no demand from retail, very little retail demand, very little office space, almost no demand. But if we want to have these coffee shops and bakeries and restaurants thrive in our downtowns, we have got to get people back in. I think we have the solution. Right. It's already built. Mm-hmm. It's vacant. It's waiting for us to do something with it.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk to me a little bit about what a conversion might cost? And I know this is a huge, wide open question. Uh-huh. So let me give you a little bit of context. Sure. If any of my ladies that are listening, if you have a deeper question or a different question, please contact Beth, right? She's going to give you contact information. But this is specifically for me because I'm right in the middle of my own thing. So I'm going to share this with everybody. So I have been building a multi-use condominium complex. I have 2 condos and one little commercial unit. And the zoning was commercial, but they allowed mixed use. It took us 10 years to get that through, by the way, 9 years. Yeah. So we've been sitting on this property for a very long time. because of COVID and ladies, I think that this is valuable for you to hear because I've talked about this project a lot. This is kind of an update on what's going on. Because of COVID, lumber costs went up. We've had a huge amount of problem with supply chain. There's been all of those things that you ladies have been hearing about. Yeah, Moneeka is dealing with. And so this project that was supposed to have been done in January of this year, even December of last year, we're close to done, but it's that last 10% that takes like 90% of the time, right, Beth, with construction. And so we're at that point now, just trying to get it done. I'm super excited about it still, but yeah, we're still in those last few moments. So now we've got our 2 condos up above. They're spectacular. They're just beautiful. And then we've got this commercial space down below. It's zoned retail. So we were originally thinking office space because it's kind of a destination place. It's not really in a walkable area. It's a walkable area, but it's hidden, right? So it's behind other buildings. So it's not really accessible for walking traffic. It's kind of a destination commercial spot. We were thinking about maybe we could get a variance and get it as an office space instead of retail. But now, as you and I are having this conversation, the first thing that comes to mind is, goodness gracious, we've got this commercial space. Now, just for perspective, once we sell the 2 condos, we will have made a very nice profit. We don't actually have to sell the commercial space down below and have thought about keeping it and renting it. But now as we have this conversation, Beth, first of all, keep in mind, it took 9 years to get the variance on our zoning from retail to multi-use. Right. Now, if we talk to the city about possibly converting this commercial space, goodness gracious knows how long that's going to take, right? But what's going on in my mind as you and I speak, Beth, is, does it make sense to start that conversation? Should we not build out the commercial right now? Because maybe instead of building it out, we wait and then convert it into a studio apartment later. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, do you have any ideas around that context? I'm going to have you come visit, by the way. I think it would be really fun.
I have tons of ideas about that. Is your space in California?
It is. It's in Los Altos. You know where Chef Chu is?
Yes.
We're right behind.
Yes.
Right by Armadillo Willie's.
Well, first of all, congratulations on doing what you're doing. I'm sorry it took you so long. It took us 3 months to get an exception to be able to put residential on ground level in San Rafael. And we're greenlit 3 months. And our clients are like, wow, that seemed to take a long time. I'm like, no.
9 years, guys. Like, really, talk about testing my patience.
Yeah. So what many people probably don't know is there's actual state law that says mixed use and commercial residential property, you have to be allowed to put residential in an ADU. It is a law. And that has to, the zoning, the local groups cannot block it. So first and foremost, that's one of the things that we do in my company, my co-founder and I, and our group, is we absolutely know the law, the California law, and it is all in favor of putting residential units in. And so I love that. Like, people are like, what? You can put ADUs in commercial space? Absolutely. Mixed use commercial space is part of California's accessory dwelling unit ADU law. And so you can convert things. They even put in boiler spaces, storage, basement, garage of mixed use commercial space. It must be allowed to be an ADU. So we talk about that quite a bit. However, we don't want to stop there. We believe that with the element plan in California, and the element plan, just a quick synopsis of it, is the state of California mandated every single county and town within the state to put in more residential housing. If they don't do it this next 8 years, we're at the beginning of an 8-year plan, all sorts of penalties come in, which we could talk about. So municipalities are desperate to get residential housing in because they don't want to give up their authorities to what will happen if they don't do that. So we just simply come in and talk to the municipality and say, we have the solution. It's right here. Why are you, what would be the sense of blocking it? And if we throw in affordable housing, it once again, in our neighborhoods, a 1-bedroom apartment rented at $3,000, believe it or not, is considered affordable housing. So I only say that in as much as it's affordable, but it's also profitable for owners. And if it weren't profitable, we're not going to get housing. So I talk about that a lot because I am a property owner. I do rent it out, but I don't do it simply out of the goodness of my heart. We also make passive income. And if we don't have it profitable for property owners, then it's, in my estimation, it's not going to happen. So there's a win-win here. And so your property, if it were me, I would seriously consider residential. And why? Because where you have your building, that's huge demand for residential. Yes. I mean, incredible. You would have people lining out the door.
It's true. Absolutely.
As opposed to trying to give rent concessions or please come and have an office here. Why don't you rent to someone who can live, work there?
Yeah.
And so that's my thoughts on that. I hope I answered that question for you. I have very strong opinions.
No, I can't tell that. I love women with strong opinions. I am one. That's awesome. And so I guess what's going through in my mind, I hope it's okay that I'm taking this so personal, but the thing that's going on in my mind is we had 9 years to get the variances, get everything through. We're on the back end of finishing the building. Should I approach the city now, or should I get all the approvals as it is, sell the 2 condos, and then go back and say, let's do something with this commercial because of the current circumstances? I'm afraid to get them pulling all of our approvals so that then we can't sell the 2 condos that, I mean, we've got a huge loan on this, right?
Right. So I appreciate your concern because we have done a lot of building, and I understand you don't want to tick anybody off. What I would recommend is that you would work with us because we aren't you. And we simply come into municipalities with a mindset of we're here to give you, municipality, a solution. And we do it very neutral, very diplomatically, very friendly. And we even end up talking to elected officials like mayors because they love this idea. And so we're not making it about this particular, your singular issue, but the more holistic problem that the municipality is having. And we're here to help you find solutions. And by the way, it is great publicity to do something like this for the municipality. So they're excited about that. So, to be incredibly self-serving, I would.
I love that.
And we do things like that. We do work just on very particular issues. And the other thing that I think about is that we gently but firmly and friendly remind municipalities and counties what the law is, because they don't know. And we just show it to them. Or like, do you know that you ministerially have to approve this in 60 days? So when you're talking about your odyssey of years, when we're talking about ADUs, the state of California said you have to approve plans within 60 days. And you cannot block it unless it has to do with life safety code. So what has happened in the past that took many, many, many years to do, even to get variances. So I'm not even quite sure you need a variance to make that residential. I would even question that. I think that that's already in the California. It could already be mandated in the state of California. We don't use those words mandated. We just say, did you know? And often we educate people quite a bit because it's in our best interests.
Right.
So, and then getting back to cost, I know I skirted that because everybody hates, like during COVID, one of the things that we do quite a bit is we do so much pre-work and really think this through, is that here's my opinion. Anybody can build anything that's super expensive. If you have no budget, you can do anything. The real interesting problem to solve here is how to build economically, but good, so that it's profitable. So when we talk to architects, we have architects that work not on a percentage of the bid, but on they give us a bid all in based on their hourly rate. So that is right there is hugely different. The second thing is we make decisions based on what is available, what is practical, what is beautiful, but which will be able to put in rent at the price point that we're targeting. So when we're building, we pick what's available. What are the refrigerators we put in? The ones that are available, right? What is the flooring that we're going to put in? Durable and beautiful and available. The contractors that we're going to use, we're going to predominantly pick them up when they're down season, the rainy season. So we don't have a problem getting subcontractors or contractors because we're working inside an envelope. In the state of California, you cannot build, you cannot pour concrete foundation after October 15th because of the rain and the floods that can happen. By definition, our conversions are all interior, so we don't have any limitations with that. So there's things that you can think about. The thing I find, I've built with my husband beautiful houses, but that is not interesting to me. What is super interesting is good housing that can be rented and that owners can make a profit. And I think we, in your client, in people that listen to this podcast, which I'm so happy about, women, we are so good at this. We know how to make homes. We know how to work within constraints. We know how to work with people. We know how to influence people without being super aggressive. And we kind of sneak in and we get this stuff done. And people, and I can do a spreadsheet like no one else. And people double check my work because they can't believe the return on investment is as good as it is. But my spreadsheets are good. And it's profitable. And we do not take years. We take months to convert.
Interesting. Yeah, we will have you come visit our property. I'm going to have you talk to my business partner too.
Sure.
So this was a great conversation. I'm sorry we went on a Moneeka tangent, but let's go. Let's go to the next piece, which is: do you think that it's a good investment to buy some of these commercial properties? Because there's a lot of commercial property owners that are just desperate. They're going to be selling for, my belief, and you tell me if I'm wrong, is that they're going to be selling for pennies on the dollar because they can't rent it out and they don't understand the idea of conversion unless they've listened to this podcast, which would be amazing. But they, many of them don't understand that. So does it make sense? Commercial property is more expensive than residential in general. So even pennies on the dollar might not be a good deal. So could you speak to that whole thing? Does it make sense as an investor in residential to snap up some of these commercial office spaces and then convert them? What do you think?
Yeah, so that's exactly what some of our first clients are doing. So we converted their already owned property and they loved it so much is they're like, okay, I'm immediately going to buy more. And so you're right. Commercial property could be more expensive, but not necessarily. Not in Northern California, necessarily. It really depends. But when you're going to sell a commercial property or purchase it, you are looking at what type of rent you're going to get per square foot. It's the whole thing. Right? It's all based on revenue. If you want to leverage it or if you want to get a loan, you're going to have to say and if it's already rented, it's so much more valuable. If it's vacant, you're just going to do a speculation. And I would not I would not buy commercial space right now that is vacant and speculating that you're going to rent it to retail or office space. I think that is not a good decision. However, if you're coming and just look at how many vacant office buildings are for sale right now, there are so many. And who's going to buy them? But if you're going in and we can do the work to really we give people estimates before we even start working with them. Mm-hmm. I mean, we can't guarantee it, but we know what things cost. If you can go in and get a really good price and purchase something and convert it, you probably are going to be making, this can be profitable in just a few years, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. But what is even more interesting is what if you purchased it, converted it, got it occupied, and then sold it? Mm-hmm. And I always think this last year and a half, my husband and I sold residential property because it was a feeding frenzy.
Yes.
And now we're going to be purchasing more because it's slowing down. But I think that you want to buy property, you want to buy things before everybody decides they want to buy it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's human nature that, you're like, oh, I need to buy a house. I need to buy a house now. I'm going to outbid the next person by, 5% or something. Okay, let's all decide that's an emotional decision. And I get it. But for commercial right now, you have no competition, unless, of course, you want to buy warehousing. Warehousing is very, very high priced, mm-hmm. but downtown vacant office space, it's cheap.
Okay, perfect. Yes, yeah. It's all relative, right? Yeah. So the other piece that I wanted to talk to you about is turning spaces in our homes where we live and already mm-hmm. own our own residential real estate, how to convert some of that into highly profitable spaces. We are out of time, though. So what I think we're going to do is just take that to extra. Does that sound fun, Beth?
That sounds wonderful.
Perfect. So ladies, we're going to be talking about how to turn your home into a profit center if you want to. And we're going to do that in extra. But before we close down the show, could you tell everybody, Beth, how they can reach you? Because I'm sure lots of people have questions for you.
Sure. So the best way to reach me is my email is beth@myvadu, myvadu.com. Mm-hmm. Our website is myvadu. The company's name is VADU. That's the very easiest way to get a hold of me. I always respond to emails. As you can tell, I love talking about this space. And we absolutely will do a free consultation. We usually say it's about a half hour, but it usually runs to like 2 to 3 hours.
Oh my goodness. That's so generous. My goodness.
Well, what happens is that people become so interested. Our conversion rate of clients is super high, mm-hmm. But we know the space. We like to talk about it. If you get a hold of me, if it is a property that you own, that you know somebody that owns it, or you're thinking of purchasing, we do like to know the property because it really is going to be dependent on that property. Because we will tell people, not a good idea to convert, mm-hmm. or if you do it, it's going to be expensive. But so we do talk about the particular property.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. This has been amazing. Thank you, Beth.
You're welcome. It's been such a pleasure.
Yeah, I've had so much fun. And ladies, stay tuned for Extra. We're going to be talking about turning some of your personal space into profit space. So let's do that on Extra. If you are subscribed for Extra, stay tuned. If not, please go to realestateinvestingforwomenextra.com and you can sign up now. For those of you that are leaving us now, thank you so much for joining Beth and I for this portion of the show. I look forward to seeing you next time. And until then, remember, goals without action are just dreams. So get out there, take action, and create the life your heart deeply desires. I'll see you soon. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to find out more about how to become a blissful millionaire, Go to blissfulinvestor.com. See you next time.